Hello YouTubers out there, this is the Boob Wasteland Show with your host, Jerry Saravia. Now on the Boob Wasteland Show, as I've said many times before, I like to discuss all aspects of television. I don't just review TV shows, TV movies, reality TV, cartoons, whatever the case may be. It's exclusively not just those things, but it's all inclusive. Anything regarding the vast wasteland of television. And it is a wasteland, including topics related to actors, actresses, directors, broadcasting companies, anything in reference to television. So two big stories came up in the last few days, and these are the kind of stories that I'm always interested in discussing, and they are in reference to Paula Deen and Bill Maher. Now, why bring up these two? Well, Paula Deen has been faced with the possibility of losing a lot of sponsors over her cooking show on the Food Network. And I do mean a lot of sponsors. As of this airing of this show on June 24th, 2013, Smithfield had dropped her. So let's get to Paula Deen first. Now, what's up with Paula Deen? Well, as we all know, over a year ago, on January 17th, 2012, she announced that she had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and that it was disclosed that she was a paid spokesperson for the Danish pharmaceutical company Novo Nordisk, whose main export is insulin. So she was called a hypocrite. So this is like really the first major controversy regarding Paula Deen, aside from, I guess, a year or two earlier when she was hit in the face with a Thanksgiving turkey. She probably would expect or prefer that such a thing would happen and that be the focus rather than what's going on now. So she was called a hypocrite because she was continuing to promote her high sugar diet. As you all know, the foods that she promotes are the kind of foods that you certainly cannot eat every single day. Rich, fatty, sugary foods. While disclosing her medical condition and so on and so forth, and then representing this drug company. Now, I kind of thought at the time, big deal, so what? I mean, it's I don't think she would assume that anyone should eat this type of food every day, but of course I never saw her show, so I don't know. Nevertheless, I didn't think this was such a big deal, and I think she was starting to introduce foods that would be more acceptable for people with diabetes, but, you know, who can say, you know, this is the kind of woman who said that kids should be able to have cheesecake for breakfast, chocolate cake and meatloaf for lunch, and french fries. You know, okay, anyway, I don't eat that way, so, but I know some people do, but probably not a good idea to promote that as a thing. Certainly not on a daily, certainly not daily, but with moderation, although I would never have cheesecake for breakfast, but we'll leave that aside. So that was the main controversy, but now something else has come up. Apparently Paula Deen has used the N-word, and now at first I'd read that she had used the N-word and said this word to her husband 30 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, in reference, and this was privately, in reference to, she was in line at a bank, and a black guy came in there and robbed the bank, and she said, well, only, you know, da-da-da-da-da, we do such a thing because he is da-da-da-da-da, etc. I think you get the gist of it. Well, apparently something else has come up. A former employee named Lisa Jackson alleged in a lawsuit that in the presence of Miss Jackson and Uncle Bubba's restaurant manager and vendor, that Bubba Hiers, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, stated they should send President Obama to the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico so he could N-word rig it. Now, the plaintiff stated that she was appointed by Deen to handle the catering and staff for Bubba's wedding in 2007, and she asked Deen what the servers should wear. And Deen says, well, what I would really like is a bunch of little to wear long-sleeve white shirts, black shorts, and black bow ties, you know, in the Shirley Temple days when they used to tap dance around. Now, this is the allegation, and that would be a true Southern wedding, wouldn't it? Well, we can't do that because the media would be on me about that. Now, what's interesting is that this was in 2007. Um, Deen stated that she has used the word the N-word at times, and yes, of course, that she has used it because she's a Southern lady, and it's expected, and that's what she grew up with. You know, she is currently 66 years old, so I guess pre-civil rights, certain words enter the vernacular, and she uses these words and has used them. Um, Now, the interesting thing is that as a result of this controversy, Food Network announced that it would not renew her contract when it expires at the end of June 2013. Now, here's my thing. If this was a word that she had said to her husband 30 years ago, which is how the news actually is promoting this, including CBS This Morning, I would say they should be ashamed of themselves, CBS This Morning, for saying that this is reason for a firing. It's not. Um, it's not because of a word she used 30 years ago. It's because she has consistently used this word, and in the presence of other people, employees, and so on and so forth. Not to mention that, this plantation party. I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes it's not even so much the word itself as, and sometimes not even as much as how it's used. It's really what you're doing to show your level of discrimination and racism. That's what matters. Your actions, your body language speak louder than words. So that is something that people should consider. Now, of course, using that word is an issue. We live in that kind of world, but it's always been an issue. This is nothing new. I mean, I can even tell you about A Patch of Blue from the mid 1960s. This was a film that Shelley Winters appeared in. She had been a civil rights advocate, and she had a problem with her character saying this word. But of course, her character in that movie was a character and was racist. So you have to deal with that reality, don't you? So I'm not with Paula Deen on this one. This is, how can I put it? I don't support her in this regard. Not if she's been doing this, but if this had been consistent, I would understand. But the fact that this was in 2007, at least from one alleged statement, but who knows? Maybe more stuff is going to be coming out as I speak. I think 2007 and 2013, in 6 years, somebody decided to say something. I don't understand. So who knows what's all this about? This is a former employee, so there's that. I guess we'll find out more. Nevertheless, a lot of sponsors have dropped Paula Deen. Now, what the heck does this have to do with Bill Maher? Well, Bill Maher defended her because he said you shouldn't be fired for saying that word. Bill Maher should know this. Why? I really like Bill Maher. I think he's a terrific comedian. He's outrageous. He is in your face, and he wants people to really wake up and smell the coffee. That being said, he has used the word on his show, and nobody's ever raised or bat an eyelash on that one. And it's HBO, but he's used the word, and I'll be specific here, in reference to Rick Perry's ranch. This was last year, one of his shows. The ranch being called, N-word, this and that. So he's used the word then, and he used it as a joke, and it was a news story, to be fair. But there have been other times that it kind of slipped, and he would say it, but not in a mean way. So as I said, it has to do with context. However, Bill Maher got in trouble a few days ago with Sarah Palin, because in his stand-up comedy act, he had mentioned the R word. I can't believe this is how we say things now, but okay, I'll just say the R word. In reference to mental retardation. At least I can say that much, I think. And this was because of Sarah Palin's son, who is mentally challenged. And he made a comment on his show and saying that, well, the son is an R word, but not the only R word in the family. There's another one in reference to Sarah Palin. Now this is, I guess, what some sources say was the content of the joke. So Sarah Palin tweeted back and said, well, you can't be saying this about my son. You can say anything you want about me, interestingly enough, which brings up a lot of other questions, but you can't say anything about my son. Now, I understand what she's saying, and perhaps Bill Maher did cross the line, but it's a joke. And if you don't like it, jokes are sometimes nasty. But as long as they're funny, I always remember, you know what? I remember what Eddie Murphy said once to Barbara Walters back in 1987. I remember this vividly. He said, she asked him, if it's in bad taste, a joke, you know, what if it's too much? He says, if it's funny, then it's not in bad taste. And I always hold that as a reason. So if his joke backfired, which, you know, it's hard to tell what was the exact joke because, of course, when this news story came out, once again, the media was all over it because he used the word, not the context, not even the joke itself, but the fact that he used the word, the R word. He didn't say mentally challenged because, let's be honest, if he said Sarah Palin's son is mentally challenged, but he's not the only one in the family who's mentally challenged, I don't know if that would have been nearly as funny, as sharp, as something that would stab you with that kind of humor. But that's just me. I'm not a comedian, so I don't know. It might have still been funny, it might not have been. I don't know. But Bill Maher didn't really get into a whole lot of trouble over that one. And it's not like HBO is dropping him. It's not like, well, there are no real, I guess there are sponsors for HBO, but he hasn't been dropped. You know, he's been fired only once before for politically incorrect, and that was eons ago. So what's interesting is this idea, which is what I want to get to, is my point, is selective outrage. That's exactly the problem with the news. That's why it's relevant to this show to discuss it. The news selects who it is that they want to give this outrage to, what they choose to be outraged by. So when Quentin Tarantino makes a movie like Django Unchained, and it has the N-word in it a lot, and a lot of violence, which was really the main issue because it was so soon after Sandy Hook. Well, what about Sylvester Stallone and Bullet to the Head? What about all these other action movies? Why? Because Quentin Tarantino is clearly one of the most famous directors of all time, and he always will be. So it's easier to pigeonhole him, blame him. Don't blame anyone else, because anyone else is not going to be held up to that standard. You know, not even Sylvester Stallone. Bullet to the Head. Nobody said, Director Walter Hill, what are you doing making a movie with all this guns and craziness and action? And, you know, you could even take that a little step further, couldn't you? I mean, in Fast and Furious, I'm sure a lot of cars crash into each other and flip up in the air and who knows what, and perhaps some people die or not. I don't know, because I don't really watch Fast and Furious. But my point is, that could also be a case of saying, well, you know, if somebody's drunk driving, and they get into an accident, this movie trivializes car accidents. They can say whatever they want. But they choose certain targets. Quentin Tarantino has been accused of one thing after another because the violence in his films have impact. They really hit you. They may not be a raw nerve, but it still hits you. And since Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, this has been the case. But other directors, they don't get nearly that much outrage. So they're selecting certain people that they use as scapegoats. It's easy for the media to select them. But Bill Maher ain't going to be fired, and I don't think he should be. Paula Deen, if this was a constant thing, and it meant firing certain people because they heard what she said, and they said, I'm going to sue you because you can't be talking that way, or whatever the case may be, that's a whole nother issue. But, you know, should she be fired? If this affects the workplace, and she knows she should know better not to use that kind of language because it can lead to problems, then yeah, I guess so. It's a slippery slope, a little bit of a slippery slope, because it doesn't sound like she's really doing it to be hateful, but perhaps it's just complete ignorance. We'll find out more about this and where it goes, but that's my point. That's really what I wanted to focus on here, which is selective outrage. We can be outraged by Paula Deen, but somehow Dr. Laura Charles, not so much. It comes up in the news, but she got a job and it didn't affect anything, as far as I know. We select certain people, but it's selective. That's what you got to remember. So the next time that somebody uses a hateful word, consider who the source is, how it's being used, and why this person is being attacked. And that's when you'll find out the truth. I'll name some other ones. Paris Hilton also did this once before. And there's that singer, John Mayer, same thing. Did it in Rolling Stone magazine. I'm not going to get into, black people can say it all the time. Kanye West in his song Black Skinhead uses it, his new song, and so on and so forth. We're not going to get into that. But again, it's selective outrage. Nobody's going to fire Kanye West for using the N-word in his songs. Think about that. But then again, he's probably not calling other people who he knows the N-word or using other hateful language that he works with. So that's the slippery slope. Hey, this is always a topic of interest for me, so we'll talk about this more at some other point and see where things go. And Paula Deen is out. I think that's clear as day. Losing too many sponsors, that's it. Her career is kind of over, I think, at this point. And that's all I got to say on that. This is the Boob Wasteland Show with your host, Jerry Saravia, signing off.